everyone, my name is Keely. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. Today I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in March. So March was kind of a weird reading month for me. I am a TBR reader to an extent, but in March I was such in the mood to mood read, and that's because I kept DNFing books. So then I decided to just randomly pick up whatever book I wanted to at that moment. I still managed to read 15 books. I think I was getting a little slumpy as well, so 15 books I'm ecstatic about. This resulted in 5,366 pages. Now moving right into stats, my most read genre of the month was actually fantasy. I read 5 fantasy books, and coming in right after that I read 4 romance books. That's kind of shocking to me because I don't consider myself a fantasy reader. As far as format goes, I listened to 3 audiobooks, I read 7 ebooks, and I read 5 physical books. 11 of these books were YA and 4 of them were adult. And as far as ratings go, I had 0 1-stars, 1 2-star, 4 3-star, 4 4-star, and 6 5-stars. And the last stat is author status. 1 of these books was a debut book, 4 of them were new to me authors, and 10 of them were repeat authors. As usual, I'm going to go through these books in the order I read them in. So the first book I completed in March was Remember Me Gone by Stacey Stokes. This was an arc I've had from NetGalley for so long, so I randomly picked it up, and I am so glad I did. So this book is set in a small deserty town called Tumbletree, Texas. And in this town, Lucy lives with her father, and her father has the ability to remove people's memories. So people come from all over the country to see her father so he can remove these horrible, sad, heartbreaking memories from them, and so they can go on and live happier lives. Now, Lucy works at her house with her dad, but she is also in training to become a memory taker as well. And as she is going through the training, she tries to take her dad's memory because that's how they teach them, and she sees something that she thinks maybe she shouldn't have seen, and she realizes that her memories might have been tampered with as well. So I am usually one that hates the memory loss trope, but the way that it was played with in this book was so fascinating, and I really loved it. I also loved that this was also a mystery book because you're trying to figure out with Lucy and her friend what exactly is going on, and if Lucy really did lose her memories, and if she did, why are those memories taken from her, and who are the bad guys, what's going on? The fact that this book was also in Tumbletree, Texas, which is a fictional town, but is very reminiscent of the towns that are out near El Paso. If you're from Texas and you've been there, then you can probably picture perfectly the town in this book, and that just put me in such a great setting and scene in this book while I was reading because I could picture everything perfectly. I really loved Lucy and her relationship with her father, and the friendship that she started to develop throughout this book. I just really enjoyed the characters. I loved the mystery and how everything was revealed. It was so fascinating, and I just loved the added touch of magic that was in this book where they can take memories and how that turns twisty throughout the book. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. It blew me away. I was so surprised, and I really recommend it. Next, I read Once Upon a K-Prom by Kat Cho. We follow high schooler Elena, and she is about to have prom at her high school. When she was younger, her childhood best friend Robbie moved away to Seoul, South Korea, and he became a famous K-pop idol, and he is a part of the biggest K-pop group in the world. When Robbie randomly shows back up one day, he asks her to prom because when they were children, he promised her that they would go to prom together. This book was so cute. I am such a sucker for prom books, and maybe it's because I hated my own prom and so I'm just like living through these characters. If you are a K-pop fan, you will probably just love this so much. It warmed my heart. I loved all the K-pop talk in here. They even mentioned some of my favorite groups, like NCT was mentioned a couple times, and this book also includes K-pop profiles, which if you are a K-pop stan, you know kpopprofiles.com is great for you. And it was fun to see those little added things for the band members. I just really loved that. I will say Elena was really annoying to me at the beginning. She did have some character development, which was nice to see, but I really didn't care for her as a character, but I had so much fun reading this book overall, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was a reread for me, and that is Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welch. So in this book, we follow Lena, and Lena's mother has just passed away, and her mother's dying wish is for Lena to get to know her father and move with him to Italy, which is where he lives, because he is the caretaker of a cemetery. How cool is that? Like when Lena first moves there, she's like, oh my gosh, he lives in a cemetery. That is my dream, living in a cemetery in Italy. Okay, besides the point, when Lena gets there, she discovers a journal of her mother's from her mother's time in Italy. And so as she is becoming a new person living in Italy, trying to figure out things, she is also getting to know her mom more through this journal. I love this book so much. I read it years and years ago and it held up so well. I just really, really loved it. Lena in here is also a runner and I am a distance runner as well, so it was really funny because I would listen to this audiobook when I was running, and I remember one morning I was doing a 7-mile run, and as I was running, Lena was like, oh, I did 7 miles this morning. Girl, me too. I loved that so much. The Italy vibes in here were immaculate. This is one of the best books I've read with like Italian vibes, and I just really, really loved it. It made me want to travel so much. I kept looking at plane tickets while I was reading this because I just had that wanderlust feeling because of this book. I love all the characters in here, and I love the grief journey that Lena goes through throughout this story and her relationship with her father as she is getting to know him. This book is just so amazing and I truly love it. I gave it 5 stars once again. The next book I read was Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welch. This is book 2 in the Love and Gelato companion series, and this one follows Lena's best friend Addie. Now Addie is in Ireland for her aunt's wedding, and Addie has a bunch of brothers. And one of her brothers, Ian, and her are like best friends. But going into this book, we know that something has happened and they are arguing or they ignore each other. Something has broken them apart, and so as the book goes on, we are slowly figuring out what happened and why they cannot get along. But when she is in Ireland, she finds this book that is like Ireland's Guide to the Heartbroken, and she has recently gotten her heart broken, so she uses this guide to travel Ireland and try to fix her heart and her relationship with her brother. So I will say this book was not nearly as good as Love and Gelato. It felt a lot longer and I did not like the characters. Addie wasn't horrible, but her brothers, could not stand them. I really, really did not like them, and I did not care for the relationship that developed in here as well. So overall, I give this one 3 stars. The next book I read was The Best of Friends by Lucinda Berry. This is an adult thriller, and we follow 3 mothers and one tragic night that intertwines them all. So these 3 mothers have been best friends pretty much their whole life, and they all have sons of the same age. But one night these sons are hanging out, and it leaves one of them dead, one of them in a coma, and one of them traumatized and unable to speak. So throughout the story, we are trying to unravel the mystery of that night and what really happened. So I will say this book was definitely fast-paced, and I was so intrigued to see what happened and unravel that mystery, but I am one of those people, if I don't enjoy the characters, it hinders my enjoyment of the book overall, and I hated every single character in this book. I did not feel bad for a single one of them, but overall I did really want to know what happened, and so it kept me reading. I was intrigued with the plot and everything else that was going on. It was just the characters that were horrible, so I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was one that I have been meaning to get to for years, and I finally did it, and that is Save the Date by Morgan Matson. So this book follows a teenager named Charlie, and her older sister is finally getting married, and they have been planning this for so long. She is getting married at their family house, and Charlie has several older siblings. Like at the beginning of this book, there's a whole chart about who's who and who's married to who. So Charlie's really excited because she feels like this is the final time her and her entire family can get together one last time and just have a really great weekend. Now Charlie's mother is actually pretty famous because she is a comic strip writer, and the comic she writes about is about Charlie's family. So she has been writing this comic strip for years about the kids growing up and all the shenanigans that they get into. But this comic strip is finally coming to an end in that same wedding weekend. And of course, as they are getting ready for the wedding, everything that can go wrong goes wrong. So I will say, I love Morgan Matson so much. I'm pretty sure I've given all of her books like 5 stars. This is the outlier of that. So it wasn't a bad book, but the fact that everything went wrong, I was getting so anxious reading this book. Like, I just did not like the idea of everything going wrong because the characters were anxious, therefore I was feeling anxious. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It took me a while to read because I just had to keep putting it down. Her books do read really quickly for me, but because I put it down, it took longer to read because I was just getting too anxious reading it. But I did like the characters and the family dynamics overall, but still 3 stars. The next book I read was actually a nonfiction book, and that is Run to Overcome by Meb Keflezighi. And Meb is actually a US marathoner. He is a distance runner, he has been to the Olympics, and I've been following his career for as long as I can remember. So when Meb was about 11 years old, he immigrated from Eritrea with his family, and he had no idea running was even a sport, and so it was interesting to get to read about his whole life and how he came into running and discovered it, and all of the trials and tribulations he had to go through to become what he is today. I tabbed this book up. I just really loved it, and I love getting to see the insight of a professional runner. If you're a runner, I definitely recommend this book. Of course, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read for my episode of TBR Takedown, and that is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This is book 1 in the Arc of the Scythe trilogy, and it is a dystopian trilogy. I think it's trilogy. I said that with a question mark because I'm pretty sure it is a trilogy. But in this world, we have figured out how to defeat death. Now, if you die, you go to a revival center, and we have kind of conquered diseases and death and all of that. So there are these people who their job is a scythe, and they go around killing people to control the world's population. So we follow 2 characters in here who are training to become scythes, and a lot of times they are picked to become scythes because they don't want to be one, and that makes a good scythe because you're not going to be cruel. But the way that they kill in here, the gleanings, is so fascinating because each scythe does it in a different way. So we have the good scythes, and then we have scythes that can be really cruel, and the scythedom itself is just so fascinating. There's also kind of like an AI cloud system in here, which is really cool to learn about. I loved this book so much. I love dystopian, and Neil Shusterman, the way he writes it makes it feel like it could come true, and it seems so realistic. I loved the idea of the gleanings and how different it was each and every time, and how methodical some of the scythes could be. The characters in here were really interesting in seeing the different trials and tests that they had to do. I just loved it so much, and I gave it 5 stars. Next was another reread for me, and that is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. This is book 2 in the series. Don't have to say much. I gave it 5 stars once again. These next 2 books I also read for TBR Takedown, and the first one I want to talk about is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. So we follow Cygna, and when Cygna was younger, everyone at her parents' party died except for her. Death touched her, but he was unable to claim her, and so all her life, Death has followed her around like a shadow, and people she lives with end up dying. So one day, Cygna goes to this new manor and lives with a distant relative, but she is starting to wonder what is going on because people in this house are becoming sick, and she's starting to suspect that they were poisoned, so Cygna is having to team up with Death to try to figure out what's going on. So this book was so boring. I was so bored reading it. I did not care about anyone. It dragged so much. Originally, when I first picked this up, I was like, ooh, I love the writing. It's so beautiful. I am a simple writing girly at heart. I cannot do beautiful writing because I feel like I am just slugging through it. I feel like I am walking through sand when I read beautiful writing. It is just not for me. I recognize it as it is. I can pull out a few quotes here and there, but reading a whole book with that kind of writing, I just don't vibe with it. Once again, did not care about the characters, did not care about the romance at all. I was so bored the whole time, so I give this one 2 stars. Next, I read Lark by Alex Astor. So in this world, there are 6 different realms, and every 100 years, they go to the island of Lark to try to fight, and people have to die to break the curse. So each realm has a different magical ability, and because of this curse, each realm also has a curse associated with their ability, and so they all come together to like this tournament type thing, and they have to try to break the curse. Now, this was really confusing when I first got into it because the tournament isn't like a fight to the death. So the first 50 days, there's like no killing. They're all just displaying their abilities, and then after that, they have to like build alliances, and they also have to team up. So it's not like straight up Hunger Games style, which is what I was expecting. There really wasn't a whole lot of death in here, which for me was disappointing. I did not care, once again, about the relationship. I just wasn't vibing with anyone, and the way that the relationship ended in this and the direction it's going, I am definitely not happy with. I will say I did love all the magic once I finally understood all the realms and who was who, because this book has so many characters. It was so hard to keep track of who the person was, what realm they were from, what their powers were and what the curse was as well. It was just so much information, and the writing was not my favorite. I don't think it was bad writing, I just think I didn't connect with it, and so I was so confused, so I felt very removed from it. But like the last, I don't even know how many, 50 pages, I was so into it. So I gave this one 3 stars. Originally it was going to be 2 stars, but because the ending was really intriguing to me, I ended up giving it 3 stars. But it was still disappointing me because I thought I was going to fall head over heels with this. I think I will continue based on how this one ended, but if you are interested to see my real-time thoughts, definitely go check out my TBR takedown video. Next, I read a romance, and that was A Brush with Love by Maisie Eddings. So we follow a dental student named Harper, and she is top of her class, super hard on herself, and she also struggles with anxiety. One day she meets fellow dental student Dan, and she is like, I don't want a relationship because I am focused on my studies. But of course, what you can't have is what you're most interested in, and so her and Dan kind of strike up this friendship that might turn into lovers as well. So I really liked the representation of anxiety in here. I think it was done really well. There are panic attacks on page, so if that bothers you, just know that going in. But I loved that representation. As a person with anxiety, I really liked how it was done. The characters weren't necessarily 100% my favorite, especially Harper's friends. I hated her friends so much, and I know her other books are about her friends, so I want to read them because I did enjoy this first one, but I don't know if I'll like them because I hated the friends so much. Overall, this wasn't my favorite romance of all time, but I had a great time. I love the steamy scenes, and I also love the dental school setting a lot. This also talks about grief and how that looks for different people, and I always love a book that talks about grief, so I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Demon by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is book 0 in the Covenant series. This is like the prequel to the first book. This was like 100 pages long, and in this world, it seems that we are following demigods, and our main character is a half-blood. And in this world, there are demons that go after purebloods specifically because they have this ether in them, and the demons like to eat the ether because they get stronger, and we follow a girl who is being attacked by these demons. So I recently started the first book of this series after I read this prequel, and if you don't read the prequel, I feel like it would be so confusing because it just jumps right into the action, and this prequel book, or this prequel novella, I guess, Demon, really tells you the whole scenario and where we're at and how we got there, so I definitely recommend reading this one first if you are interested in the Covenant series. There's not a lot to say about this because I didn't dive too much into the world because it was so short. It was just kind of a touch on what the series is going to be about, but I still gave it 4 stars. It was fun and action-packed. The next book I read was another reread for me, and that is The Kinder Poison by Natalie May. This is book 1 in the Kinder Poison trilogy, and it is one of my favorite series of all time, and I have never heard anyone talk about it, so hopefully you'll pick it up after you hear me just exclaim my love for it. So in this world, we follow Zaru, and there are different magical abilities, and Zaru and her father are whisperers, which means that they can talk to animals. So they keep a stable, and they basically live in this stable because unfortunately, being a whisperer is actually one of the lowest magical abilities, so they live in poverty. Now, at this time, the crossing is happening, and the crossing is when the 3 heirs to the throne go through this magical competition and try to see who will be the next Mestra. Now, the Mestra is basically like the king of the realm, but it is like a step up because they are almost godlike, and at the end of the crossing, they actually get enhanced abilities, so they reach like this godhood. But at the end of the crossing, they have to complete a human sacrifice. So there are 3 different heirs. There are 2 brothers and a sister, and they each get their own team. And Zaru just really wants a night of decadence because she doesn't get that at all. So her and her best friend Hen decide to sneak into the palace. And of course, Zaru doesn't get everything she wants because she is chosen as the human sacrifice. Chef's kiss. Amazing, absolutely love it. The different magical abilities in here is so cool. We have healers, we have like storm magical abilities. Obviously the Whisperer is super cool, and she gets to show her power and how powerful she truly is, even though she's just a Whisperer. I love the characters in this book so much. Zaru and Jet, and even Kasta, who's a little dark, like kind of in the gray zone. Is he a villain? Is he a hero? Is he just misunderstood? We don't know. I absolutely love it, and the crossing is set over a desert, so the setting in this world is just so fascinating. I highly recommend you pick it up. Please pick it up, and if you don't like it, please don't let me know, because I only want to know if you love my favorite books. But I gave this one 5 stars once again. I am so excited to keep reading the series. I've read the second one before, but the third one recently came out in February, so I can't wait to read the conclusion. And the final book I read in March is The Dead Zone by Stephen King. So in this book we follow John Smith. Now John Smith has been in an accident and he has been in a coma for 4.5 years. And one day he miraculously wakes up from this coma, but he wakes up with like these psychic abilities where he can touch someone and he sees different visions. So one day he is at a politician's rally and he touches the politician's hand and sees a terrible, horrible future. And so John Smith has to figure out what he is going to do with the information he has. So this book is really fascinating because we also get to see John Smith solve a serial killer case with his abilities and just the different lives he saves, but also how people look at him differently, like he is some kind of evil, even though he is helping others. So Stephen King also has this way of writing the most random chapters and point of views of all time, and then by the end, you see how it all comes together. I swear, every time I read one of his books, I'm like, Stephen, why did you just shift direction so much? And by the end, I was like, oh my gosh, that chapter from earlier and this scene, it all makes sense now. I just love the way he writes that, and for some reason, Stephen King's books just really work for me, and I wouldn't think that they did because his writing is so different than what I typically lean towards, but I really enjoyed this one. It is one of my favorites that I've read so far, and I give this one a 4 out of 5 stars. So those are all the books that I completed in the month of March. Let me know how many books you read in March. I would love to know. Sorry if my voice got a little scratchy towards the end of this video. I saw Taylor Swift 2 days ago, so my voice is not doing well right now, but I am emotionally. Love it. But if you have made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave the ice cream emoji. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, all my social media links will be down below. And I will see you next time. Bye!